I can go on and on, but controlling guest flow in a venue is super critical for those reasons and more.
Hi, I'm Russ, and this is the Memory Makers Podcast, the show that helps you create amazing customer experiences and make more memories. Memory Makers Podcast. That may just be the standard jingle now for me because I'm on a Bruno Mars kick and I will not apologize for it. Welcome, gang. Thank you, Troublemakers, for joining us. I am very excited for our discussion today. I am joined by Mr. Doug Wilkerson, and Doug is going to be talking to us about all things, not all things, but some critical things that go into your design. He has spent over 30 years in the entertainment industry working in immersive environments all over the world. His company, Dynamic Designs, is one of the best out there and do absolutely incredible work. But Doug, you've had a chance to do things with Walt Disney World and Legoland and Rainforest Cafe and Headpins and insert FEC here as well. And so you've seen a thing or two. Welcome to the show, good sir.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's an honor to be on the show. And yes, I'm blessed to do a lot of cool things. And every project's a journey, and they all go their own direction, and they all have their they all create a lot of joy, whether it's big projects or little projects.
That's
It's
right.
fun. It's all fun.
That's right. Well, and we
Yeah.
were talking a little bit before we started recording of like, gosh, yeah, we are really lucky to get to do what we do. And I think
Ah,
it's
blessed. Yeah.
it's so, whether it's people
Mhm.
that are coming in new to the industry and shocked by just how warm and good the people that we get to work with are, but also that tangible end result of the feelings and the emotions and the memories that people come to our locations for. And design is such a critical part of that. And one of the things, and I always learn something new each time I listen to one of your talks, but one of the big things that I consistently take away when you're talking with folks is there has to be an intentional path that we are going down to generate these types of emotional connections to the space. And so not only do we have to weigh that, but we also have to have something that is going to be functional for staff to operate in and not
Absolutely.
create bottlenecks. And so there's this really unique blend of kind of emotion and artistry and feeling, as well as kind of tactical, strategic, logistical elements that go into it. That not too many folks have to do that game of double dutch. And so I'm excited to get your thoughts and insights on that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, those two, functionality and guest experience, have to be connected. You can easily you can have, if overpowers the other, then you have a unbalanced concept that doesn't work. You can have a great design and all this amazing stuff in there, but if you have no idea where the guest service desk is, we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's trying to blend those two. It's definitely the challenge
I
in
love that.
design.
When you are talking with someone, and let's put it in the context of opening up a new location or their first location, what are things that operators should understand about design that most people can either overlook or take for granted in your eyes?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go two. There's two things that came to mind. One is the importance of design. You have different operators. Some are more. You look at the difference between an accountant and someone creative like we are. What's important to us are two totally different things. So,
Yeah.
but I will say, I think what a lot of clients need to understand is the importance of design. In today's society, I think that what people don't realize is not only what you have to offer from an experience from what you're putting in this box, but how people are perceived in that box is just important. And I think that's one thing that some clients that overlook. It's if you're too heavy on just like a budget. Oh, we don't need the design. I got all these things. That's not how it works. It's
Right.
how you're perceived in your venue is just as important as what you have to offer in the venue. And I'd say one other quick one that they overlooked is the time frame it takes in a process of designing a venue from start to finish. a lot of clients don't realize how long that takes.
Yeah. Well, and it's if it's going to be done right and it's going to have that staying power, it's like you can either have it, what is it, fast, cheap, or quality, but you only get to pick two of the three. It's like that holds true. It's like you can do it fast, but what's
Yes.
the quality going to look like? Or, and so just being cognizant of the ripple effects that can happen, and not being, losing long, paying a short-term gain for long-term pain. And
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. So when you look at the, in that initial conceptual design, and so somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, this is kind of what we're thinking of doing. What are some of those initial discussions that you want to have with them to understand what they have maybe in their mind? Like, what are they drawn
Yeah.
to? What story is trying to be told?
Mhm.
Where do we look for creating some type of story? And you always have done a great job of like, that we may not be beating them over the head with this story, so to speak, with info placards and everything else,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
if it's done well, it needs to feel effortless almost, right? Where
Yeah.
you can have
Yeah.
that done well. So what are some of those initial, pieces that you go through in a discovery to help start to bring a client's vision to life?
Yeah. So once we have like a list of attractions and experience we want to create, and then we obviously have to get to a point where we understand sizing of a building, or if you're going to an existing box, what size box you need. So that's after we get through those kind of early discussions, and then we kind of master plan the venue, just to make sure everything we want to put in the box fits in the box and flows correctly through the box. But after we get through that phase, now we talk. Now it's time to talk about, okay, what do we want the guests to feel? What's the story we want to tell through the venue? And a lot of times we like to connect the client to the project, and more than just they're paying money to build something. So I like to have discussions with the client on their who they are, what they love, what their background is, their family, things like that. Because in that you start to see a story, something that's developing there that you wanted to kind of sometimes pull into the venue. And so in the end, once we have these discussions, then we will talk, like, the thing about story, Russ, is that, I guess some designers are really good about, putting materials and finishes together. This color and these blends well. These colors blends well together, and these finishes and textures work well, and that is great. And you could create, aesthetically a pleasing place in that manner. But when you create a concept that's story based, it goes deeper. And I always encouraged our designers to design around a story. And if we can connect the story to the client's love and their journey, it's even better.
Yeah.
But what happens when you design, when you have a story-based design, is, I always say, it brings the soul to the project, number one, and everything is connected. So every decision that's made is driven by this overreaching story. So the materials you pick, the colors, the finishes. And when a designer gets stuck on something, and then if they come to me even, and say, I just don't know what to do here. My first question is, what's the story you're trying to tell? And then the client, I'll just come up with something. The client loves aviation. He's a pilot, let's say, and so we're bringing in kind of a 1950s retro. Like, we looked at what the world of aviation was in the 50s, and we're bringing that story to this venue. Well, that tells me where they're heading with this, so I can jump in and see materials finished. I think of the textures of planes with the bolts, like the aluminum with the little
The rivets,
bolts
yeah.
that you rivets and things you can create. Okay, that'd be a great frontage on that bar. And so I guess this is a long way of saying that when you're story based, the decisions become easier because you can
Sure.
dive, what to dive into. So, and how does that affect a guest? Well, a guest doesn't have to even know the story, but because a good story based design will be will be connected, and they'll feel a unified design and not this disconnected,
Yeah.
concept. I hope that makes sense.
No,
So,
it absolutely does. And even to your point of, yes, this is something that the client is a pilot and they want to take it. We'll use that aviation model where, again, that's going to impact aesthetic choices, but to
mhm,
your point, it's going to make it that soul of it, or it's going to start to develop its personality, right? Because
mhm, mhm.
then that's what's actually going to enable more of an emotional connection for the guests when they come through, because you will be kind of struck with, ooh, one, this is different, and
Mhm,
is
mhm.
unique. And there's thought and care that's kind of put into it. So for that first second impression, when you're walking in, you're going, oh, okay, like they know what they are about here. But then it also trickles into things like, okay, well, how do we do a menu, and what are our selections? Like
Absolutely.
that can
The
have
whole
it.
brand.
The
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
thing gets
Mhm,
impacted by that root and that seed taking place.
mhm,
And so there's that, I think, why making sure that you've got that. And you have a client you guys had worked on with, he was a professional driver and loved it, and you
mhm,
guys took what was just something as I say simple as that, but a major cornerstone of that client, and then we're able to infuse that where, correct me if I'm wrong, or fill in some more of the details, but like it
mhm.
was all about motion and how do we create motion, and not only motion but wheels, and looking at how, like, and so then that's informing, like, hey, we're going to have more round curves, or how do we create movement and the illusion of movement, and then also pay homage and tribute to these different things that are really important throughout what has that technology has evolved. Like, so many cool things start to be able to fall in place as you have something rooted in that.
Yeah, yeah. That client was a professional racer, off-road truck racer, and that discussion was, well, of course, when I had a discussion with him, my brain was going crazy with
Sure.
ideas, and so, but he didn't want to. He didn't want his place to be like a monster truck place, or race cars hanging from the ceiling. And that was no problem, like you and I just discussed. It's like you can bring that, so his story into that concept without hanging
Yeah.
trucks from the ceiling.
Right.
So like you said, what we ended up doing was saluting. He loved everything. We were able to salute, the homage. We were able to salute his love of driving and riding, and in ways with artistic, um, art on the walls, and just it's real creative ways of developing the interior to salute what he loved, with materials and finishes, without going over the top and making it heavily a hard theme.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well, and being
absolutely.
able to do that, like, even if you do get into something like in that aviation example where it's this 50s nostalgia, like, okay, is that a rustic, like, airplane hangar out in the middle of the country kind of a thing, or are
Mhm.
we going more with like that Catch Me If You Can, old school Leonardo DiCaprio, like glammed,
Mhm.
kind of travel, and those kinds of elements? And so you can have some cool contemporary infusion, or you can have a rustic dialect of that, like, depending on
Absolutely.
what's going to then also resonate with the market. So it doesn't pigeonhole you or shoehorn you into any
Mm-mm.
one direction, because you can still make all sorts of different aesthetic changes, or selections within a story.
Absolutely. You know what's awesome is, like, when you like, if someone gives you a story, or a designer gives you their story, and you have in your mind, okay, oh, this could be this, and then they share with you their concept off the story, and we can be totally different, but they're both super cool. So you can
Yeah.
go, like you just said, you can go any direction. You'll be perfectly fine. But that's what's awesome about design. It's just like, just so, it's such a there's so unique journeys you can go on, but they're both great.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I love
absolutely.
it. Well, and let's talk a little bit about like some of the function and the flow. Obviously, when they're getting into this and they're developing a concept, it's like, to your point earlier, the accountant or the bank is going to want to understand throughput and capacity, and how do the numbers crunch out? How do we turn this
Mhm.
into a vehicle and that's going to drive revenue and have that performance that it needs? Design has a huge impact on that, of just when they're walking in, like, what is the sight lines? Are they able to see what these attractions are? Are we thinking about from these complications that can come from having poor staff, hubs and spokes and all of that. When you're looking at something that maybe is particularly like a challenge of, gosh, okay, what is the right way to get these pieces to Tetris in where we don't feel like we're just, we're just boxing them in or doing that? What are some of those kind of key, oh, hey, these are some big factors that we need to think in the function and the flow of the space?
Sure. So, like we said earlier, great design is a blend of functionality and guest experience. So, we have to blend both of those. So, when you're flowing into an entertainment center, you want the guests, you have like seconds, the perception, what they feel about the venue happens very quickly, right when they walk in the door. So we try to make sure that, I think when you're in experiential design, like we are, and the type of designers we are, and we hire and that work in, we naturally see things from a guest perspective. We always want to. I think that's what makes experiential designers great. Are the ones that they everywhere they when they're laying out a venue. Everywhere that they walk in the venue, they imagine what the guest is seeing. What am I feeling when I walk in the door? When I walk down this pathway, when I go into the eatery or whatever experience is, it's really heavily geared towards the guest experience. So that part of it pretty simple for a creative person. On the functionality side, it does, if you don't have that comes from experience and understanding guest flow patterns, understanding how a entertainment venue needs to operate, what happens when they walk in the door. So where is the the transaction take place for payments? Where do we need storage and F&B and kitchens and flowing from getting food from A to B, those kind of things. So I think that good design, it'll balance those two things. And then when it comes into like I'll just speak in generalities, but a lot of good design also has what we call layered sight lines, where you don't have to put up a lot of walls. You can create separation of space via soffit lines and flooring lines, or what we call perforated walls, where let's say you walk in this great grand lobby, and so you got a great you walk in, you're like, wow, when you walk in, but you got your guest service smiling face there, smiling at you. You can get service there. So functionality, design, check those boxes. And then, but when you can also give people a sense of journey by doing layered sight lines, where you can put perforated walls where you can kind of see through the walls. You can see, oh, there's a cool bar with a giant mega media screen back there. So it gives them a sense of journey. So layering all these things together with a focus on guest experience is the key to great design, honestly.
Well, and I love that having that big kind of visual impact when they first come in, so that way it can, let them know that they've arrived, so to speak. But then to your point of layering that in where, ooh, okay, I see just enough, or like what's that over there? And so they can start to orient themselves quickly, but then have a little bit of this, like the path kind of unfolds and there's more to discover the deeper that you go in. And so trying to have all of that while then juxtaposing it with, ooh, the party rooms can't be that far away from the kitchen because the servers are not going to be able to do this or do that. Like, it's such a fun, creative problem solving, like it's like a 4D chess and Rubik's Cube kind of all had a baby together with with the finishes.
Exactly. No, and you also, some clients, they think that, oh, we don't want to put something there, it's going to block. I want them to see that. Well, you're going to give them a glimpse of it, and they're going to know that something cool is back there. But you think of the difference between just putting a bunch of attractions in a giant box with no walls. It's like there's no experience there at all. I can see everything, right? But there's no experience at all in that. So when you control guest flow through a venue, it's so important, because when you can control guest flow, you can obviously make sure they get taken care of from an operational perspective. Number two, you kind of dictate what they see, and you don't, so they don't hide, you don't hide what you have to offer. If I know if I can design in a way that I know where the guest is going because I'm how I design the venue, then I'm going to make give them a great guest experience, make sure they can be taken care of operationally. And also you can market to them. If I know where they're going, I can market new things. And so, and I can go on, but controlling guest flow in a venue is super critical for those reasons and more.
Yeah. It was interesting. I was just doing a site visit with at the Scene 75 location in Columbus, and that was an interesting piece. And I don't know if you've been there or not, but they essentially took over two levels of a mall, and you could tell one of the things that they started to do was, okay, if we're going to put a bar here, right, that is a dedicated bar, like then what attractions are going around that, and which level was that put on based on how people were even approaching this, big box that was part of this overall mall. And so looking at, okay, well, it's always dangerous to try to be all things to all people because you end up being special to no one. But so then it's like, hey, if we're going to have a broad appeal, how do we create these pockets or these areas that feel comfortable for that specific group that's going there? So if they're coming and drinking and doing that, like, great, the party rooms with the karaoke layers and all of that kind of stuff are there. And then, hey, over here on this other area closer to the main traditional mall entrance with the soft play and the sports and stuff, the kiddier arcade games and things like that are there as well. And so even just trying to think of what those individual nodes or different components of that ecosystem, what are their individual nuances that then are really trying to think of who is this for, like who is the primary person that we're trying to get here, and then how do we make it accessible for the secondary that will also be there too. So yeah, super interesting to just from the human psychological factor of, okay, how do I want to control what we're seeing and how we're feeling, make it feel exciting and engaging, but also make sure that we're crafting an experience the way that we want to.
Absolutely.
When you look at something like an operator, they maybe have a space and it's been 6 or 7 years, they're looking at adding something in new to their space. If you have clients that are going down that path, are there certain things in the upfront layer of design and work where we want to build in some eventual evolutions of the space to get to, or just giving them flexibility for some future proofing as new things kind of pop up? And are there some good best practices to keep in mind in the early design stage to accomplish that?
Well, as far as like future proofing the design, great design is time. But like when I say, I'm going to talk flow first because you've got flow and aesthetics. These fundamentals of design, whether you're designing a theme park or an FEC or almost anything, there's just good fundamentals that are timeless. Now they can adjust a little bit as society changes a little bit, but for the most part, they're pretty solid. When it comes to aesthetics, to me, because I get this a lot from clients, it's like, oh, I want a timeless design that's going to be great forever. And it's not. There is no timeless design that's great forever.
Right.
The way we think is, what we design today is going to be awesome and really solid for at least 10 years. So, and probably more, most of the time they're more, but that's just for 10 years, this venue will be will be legit and you're in good shape. After 10 years, things change, attractions change. There's different things that are developed. And so then you have to, mold to that a little bit, but when you design from the beginning, you have to commit to what you're doing today and have confidence that what you're designing today is going to be, you're good. This is a 10-year plan for sure. You're solid here for 10 years and not trying to figure out what's going on in the future because it goes like this and you end up confusing the design and end up with space that ends up you think because you're trying to project. So you think this is going to be this and that, and ends up going a different direction. So you have this kind of hole that you thought was going to be filled with this and it's not. So you're better off committing to a solid design today that's going to be good for the next 10 years, and then adjusting as the industry adjusts. When it comes to attractions, as you know better than me, um, when it comes to attractions, a lot of the industry, there's new attractions that developed every year, and those are fairly easy to swap out. You can take
Sure.
this out and you find 10 other things you can put in that spot. So you can
Right.
always evolve that way, as you will know. You
Yeah.
can you speak on that,
Yeah.
and I learned
Well,
from you on
and
that kind of stuff. But
well,
yeah,
and some of
but
that's just
yeah.
okay. Do we have good opening, spaces and everything else? And like when you're considering those types of attractions, of okay, what kind of new build out does it or does it not require? And so
Hmm.
how easily can that slip in and do some of that? But yeah, to your point where the overall flow and orientation and how people come across it and experience it and how it functions, like that groundwork, that foundation is laid. But then as new attractions or even new aesthetic choices or things, it's like, okay, yeah, in the 10-year mark you may want to look at, do we need to refresh things like light fixtures or
Hmm.
signage components or other of those kind of layered aesthetics, and re-ice the cake a little bit, or look at things like that. It doesn't necessarily mean okay, gut it all back down to the studs and start over
No,
by
no.
any means. And so that is one where I think, especially for certain operators, like, okay, having that bandwidth of how am I making sure that we're not getting nose blind to things if we have been open for a while, and how do we
Hmm.
solve some of those components, because that then by in you get this effect on a smaller scale, even just within the arcade, of okay, we just rearranged some of the arcade components and bam, it has a totally new look, or we changed
Yeah.
out a handful of the games and they think the whole room is brand new. It's like there are ways that can achieve a fresh impression without necessarily having to shake the entire Etch a Sketch by any means.
Oh,
And so
100%. 100%.
building
Yeah.
off of that good solid original foundation that was done in the first place, and then okay, what's our path of evolution once we get past that 10-year mark, and what do we need to do? Have our demographics changed? Do we need to start targeting a new audience? Okay, then maybe
Hmm.
that is a little bit more of a dramatic shift, but doesn't have to be a brand new build either. So
No, no,
yeah,
absolutely.
I
Trends
love that.
trends are um 10 years. I mean, like, here's a perfect example, and not to go down a rabbit hole, but
No,
you
let's.
know, yeah, let's do it. So 10 to 15 years ago, like, let's just take like the typical hybrid FEC. So they were designed kind of with this kind of clubby feel, the low light, a lot of uplighting on walls, and they were darker when you walk in, and it had,
Yeah,
because to allow kind of lighting to be to take on the show, and a lot of light shows over the lanes and all this stuff. And so we have clients that are now at the 10-15 year mark, and now maybe trends have changed a little bit. Now we're seeing that much more natural light and lighter and airy designs, almost just fresh. The word fresh comes to mind when you walk in. They're just fresh and airy and light, but they still cater to the right market, and they still can have that cool design, but they're just a little lighter and a little more airy. So you can take that same design that was there from 10 or 15 years ago, just with materials and finishes and some simple changes, and boom, they're ready to go for the next 10. Now that
yeah,
doesn't affect attraction changes. Those things can be added or subtracted, and you
sure,
probably need to look at new things. But a lot of clients are already making those adjustments,
yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah. No,
that's an
it's
example.
and benefiting from the fact that of hey, it's important to keep the portfolio of attractions fresh and updating that, but like it also has to, we can't lose sight of okay, what needs some TLC, or what needs, what are new ways that we can
Hmm.
engage, or how, what kind of visual things, to your point, like we want this to
Hmm.
feel more fresh because we want to stay current with the guests and stay relevant and be a place that they see themselves going to and see it as an
Hmm.
extension of themselves, and those aesthetics change. It's like why we're not, well, I guess we may be wearing bell bottoms again here before too long, but like, it's just
That's
it
right.
kind of it ebbs and flows and comes in and out of vogue, and so being able to adjust
Hmm.
to that, it really makes a big difference. when it comes to that. But so if
Yes.
I was, and I may already know the answer to this, but the last question before I'll let you go is, if someone was opening their first FEC, what would you tell them to obsess over from a design perspective?
Okay. I would obsess over getting funding to do the job great.
Mm,
Do you if someone's came up to me and said, I want to do one of these, I want to do an FEC, um, I would tell them that these are great projects and they do well, and but you have to they have to be fully designed and done great. If you want to, if you kind of what we've talked about during this discussion, if you get funded enough to build a box with attractions, then I wouldn't do it, because you're going to lose what we said. I think the first thing we talked about was, it's not only what you have, it's how you're perceived in your venue, and having that level of design. So what happens sometimes is these people get excited to do one of these, and maybe they get funding and they want to do something maybe too big. Maybe they want to do a 40,000 square foot box and they have funding to do that, but they don't have enough funding to do it right. So my advice would be, let's do a 30,000 square foot box and knock it out of the park.
yeah.
You can do your next one. Let's do 40, 50, whatever you want. But just if you can't do it great, and do it to the, and what I say, I should say it this way. You need to be a step or two above what you have in your market. And that's the level. We don't have to do Disney World and everywhere.
Right.
But my advice would be, get the funding to do it great, or wait until you can do it right. That would be my advice.
It makes sense, and I think it definitely bring it full circle, like you had said, of what we talked about at the beginning, of don't make those short-term concessions that are ultimately going to be much more expensive down the road. To do that, because it is it's the bedrock of how we start to make those emotional connections with the guests when they come in. So
absolutely.
I love it, good sir. Thank you so much for your time and insights
Honored.
on this. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Foundations coming up here before too long. And so always a great opportunity to learn and grow a little bit more alongside you, my friend.
You as well. I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
I love it. Well, thank you all for joining us as well, my troublemakers. And if you like what you heard, we always appreciate a 5-star review if we've earned it. And if you have any ideas or content or other ideas that we need to dive down into for the podcast, hit us up on social media and we'll be happy to do that. And as always, a big shout out to Mikey Mike on the ones and twos, making this whole thing happen and working the ultranet for us. And we'll catch you on the next one, troublemakers.